Good evening, all. I hope you all doing well. So, Shivaram sir, good evening.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Sir, you can take over the class. We'll start for the.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks. So, hello everyone. Good evening, all. So, I hope everyone had a wonderful day. So, let me just share my screen. So, yeah, welcome to day 14 of full stack development. So, I think we have come to the end. So, like, what are the different ways we can set up the API security? And then we went through what is OAuth, right? So instead of directly providing your credentials and password, we'll log in through a third party like Google or Facebook. So what happens? This server will generate a token. So whenever your third party website wants to access your credentials through this service, it will access only limited data. Here you can see limited access. Okay. Then we went through how does it work in the diagram. And we went through what is JW, right? So yesterday we had some small issue with it. We'll fix that and we'll start the class. Okay. Then after this, we went to what are role-based access control, right? So what was it? So based on roles, you'll allow certain operations to be performed. So instead of directly adding the permissions to the user, what you have to do, you'll create roles and then you'll set the roles to the user. Okay. Here you can see in the diagram. You create roles and then you set the users to the roles. And then whatever permissions is there, you don't directly create to the user, you'll create to the role. Okay. And then what is API whitelisting? We went through this, right? What for, say, for example, you build a website and then you'll just put only a specific pre-approved IP address. So that means only this IP address can access this website. Rest and all, it's blocked out. Okay. It's called as an API whitelisting. And then we went to what is like rate limiting, right? Yesterday, we also implemented this in Express.js. So what is this? That means for your server, you'll code a rate limiter. So what does this do? You set a time interval, for example, like 1 minute or 30 seconds or 60 seconds. Within the time limit, how many requests can I send? If it is too many requests, it will put an error saying too many requests, slow down. Okay. Then we went through what are the most common issues. So one was SQL injections. So what was SQL injection? So whenever you're building a web like application or websites, right? If you have some inputs with no proper validation, so what the attacker will do? He will try to inject some malicious SQL code, which overwrites your code, and then he will get access to unauthorized access and data manipulation. Okay. Then what is CSRF? We went through this also, right? What is cross-site like request forgery? Say, for example, you log into a website, like a bank website. So what does the bank server do? It will generate a token. You'll store the token inside the browser. And then whenever you want to fetch some bank details, the token will be sent to the server. Server will check the token. If it is okay, it will give the access. Here, what happens once you are logged in? Say, for example, you'll click on some malicious website. So what the website will do, it will be having a hidden request. So what does this hidden request do? It will take your browser saved token and then it will send. So what does the server think? Server think this is the same guy who is sending the request and then he can withdraw all your amount out. Okay. Went through this. What is cross-site request forgery? So now, yesterday, there was small issue here. Actually, whatever code we did, it was actually totally good. But there was only a small catch here. I'll explain what it is. Let me just run my project. Let's go JS, right? So then what we went through this Thunder client. Inside Thunder client, new request, and then post localhost 3000, right? Let me just open here. Slash login, right? So what happens here? So once I click on login, where is my login route? Here you can see first, we'll check whether the user is there. Where is the user? My users are here. Okay, we'll check whether this user is there or not. So if the user is there, what we'll do, we'll generate a token. So how is your token generated? Using sign function, and then you'll pass the payload, and then a secret key, and then the options object, which takes expires in. That means you're setting an expiry to the token. And then you're sending a response message as well as token. Right? If the user is not there, we are just saying invalid username and password. And then what we did inside middleware, we took the secret token, we imported JWT, and this is the syntax. And then this was the like a catch, like the problem we had like faced yesterday. So what was this? When first, let me just log in. Click on login, saying invalid user because I have not entered any data. I'll go to my body. Here I'll enter username. One is John, and then password John123. Right. So click on login. What do you get? Successful, and then the token. So what I should do? I should pass this token inside the header, right? So what I'll do? Just to Control C. I'll go here. I'll change this to get salary. So inside my headers, I'll minimize this. Inside header, I need to add what? Authorization. Then bearer space B. Okay, here was the small mistake we did yesterday. So what happened is I'm console logging the token you can see here, which I'm passing from here. So now as soon as I hit on this get request, what happens? I'm getting this string data. Everything is correct. But I need to access only this token, right? But I'm accessing this whole thing. That's the reason why it is saying invalid token here. Here you can see the message. You need to access only the token. So how do I access only the token? I'll come here, dot. Since it is a string, I'll split it at space, and then I'll access the first index. So once I split this, right, what happens? This becomes an array. This will become index 0, index 1. So I'll access my index 1. And then inside this, what I'll do? Here you can see if the role is admin, you can access the salary. Here you can see John is admin here. Okay. If it is Sam, he is an employee. That means he cannot access the salaries data. So now we'll go like now like what did I log in? I logged in as John, right? Here you can see. What is John? John is an admin. That means he can access this data. So now let us check whether this is accessible. So if I just can see here. Let me rerun this again. Control C. Change. Here you can see this is the payload which I'm getting. You can see here, right? Inside index, what's happening? I'm just console logging here. Here you can see there is a property called as role. Right? What am I console logging? Request.user. I just rerun this again. Let me just log in as Sam and see. If I log in as Sam, I should get employee can't access salary. So what I'll do, I'll come here, Sam 123. So if I click on this should be a post, right? And then login. Once I click on login, what should I get? I should get this token. So what is my duty if I get the token? Should copy. Whenever I request some data, what I need to do, I should add it inside the headers. Inside the headers, next to bearer, I'll remove this token. I'll add this new token. So now if I hit send, right, let's see what happened. Here you can see I'm getting this message. Employee can't access salary. Did you get this? This is how you use JWT. Say, for example, I log in as John. Let us see if John can access this data. John, and then I'll put John123. So if I log in, what do I get? I'll get a token for John, right? Sorry, I need to make this as post and then login. I need to change the URL also, right? Now this is the token for John. what is John? John is an admin. So now what I'll do, I'll go to my headers, minimize this, I'll paste here. So if the role is admin, what should I get? I should get the salary data, right? Earlier we got employee can't access. So now what I'll do, I'll make this get salary. So now if I click on send, you can see I'm successfully getting the data. Shreya salary is 3,000, 32,000. Jyoti salary is 21,000. Okay, this is how you achieve JWT. Okay, based on your roles, you'll get you can access different data. Okay, so now let's go to today's topic. So what is testing? You guys would have been familiar with this. So say for example, you're building any software. Once you develop the software, you can't directly deploy it, right? You need to test it. Why should you test it? Say for example, as you're developing, it's fine. But what happens is, as a developer, he can't meet all the conditions at a single time. What happens is, for example, say you're developing some website. By mistake, without your consciousness, you would have done some mistakes. So who will check these mistakes? So these mistakes are usually you'll come across when you're testing the application. So what is testing an application? That means software testing is the process of evaluating and verifying the software applications. Okay, that means whatever code you have written, you need to verify it, right? Whether the user input is a string only, whether the password validations are correct, whether it is taking space or like ignoring space. So all these validations, different functionality, all this comes under testing. It helps identify defects and improves the performance, ensures the final product meets the user requirements. Okay, did you understand this? Then what are the key points of software testing? Why do we need testing? So the reason why we need testing is because it ensures software quality and readability. Okay, at the single go itself, you can't write the most pure clean code. So what happens as you write the code, as you test, and then you start optimizing or improving it. So that's how it works in real time. And then with testing, what happens? You can detect bugs before the deployment, right? Before you deploy any software, you need to check the bugs. So how do you check the bugs? Whenever you test some application. And then the other point is it improves the user experience and security. Yeah, right. Say for example, if you're building some website, you can come across some loopholes in it. So where can you come across this? Whenever you're testing. Okay. And then what are the types of testing? You guys would have been familiar with this. There are only so many types. So, but like one of the most common types are manual and automated. So manual in the term itself, you'll get to know it is performed by the testers without any automation tools. Automation tools means your third-party softwares. Okay. Then what is automated testing? Automation testing means you just write the script, whereas the tools will to take care of everything. You can see here, use the scripts, the tools to run test automatically. Okay. Then what are the levels of testing? There is something called as unit testing, system testing, and user acceptance testing. So what is unit testing? Unit means a smallest part of your application. Say, for example, a function or a class. So this is usually done by the developers. So whenever they write the code, right? Say, for example, you're writing some function like calculator function, which does addition multiplication. So as a developer, once the function has been coded, you need to minimally check whether this functionality has been working or not as I expected. So that is called as unit testing. And system testing means the whole application gets tested as once. And then user acceptance testing means, so based on your business needs, right? Say, for example, there will be some manager clients and all. So based on their needs, this testing will be done. Okay. Then there is something called as test-driven development, TTD, and then BDD, behavior-driven development. So what are these two things? So in the name itself, here the test is driving your development. Okay, here we'll come to this next one in the next topic. So what is this saying? This is saying that your test will drive the development. Here you can see in test-driven development, it is a software development approach where tests are written first. You need to remember this. Tests are written before the actual implementation of the code. That means before you write the code, they'll start writing the test cases. Okay, this follows a pattern called as red-green refactor cycle. Okay, What do I mean by this? I'll say here, what are the key points of test-driven development? Here you can see, this is a methodology where the tests are created before writing the actual code. Okay, some of you guys can have the question like, why should I write tests before the actual code? I'll say the answer for that. So for this, this usually focuses on improving the software quality and reducing bugs. So what is the TDD cycle? Here you can see there's something called as a red-green refactor. Here you can see in the diagram. So what happens is, when you start something, right? Whenever a new feature or new model is requested, what you have to do is first you write the test case for that module. Say, for example, you're creating a login module which takes username and password. So before writing the code for this, so first they'll write a test case saying that there is an input field. This input field can only take string or can only take number, and it should ignore spaces. So different test cases. First, the test cases are written. And then you can here, once the test cases are written, you'll run those test cases. Since there is no code, here you can see red means while the test cases fail for the feature, since no code exists. That means first you'll write the test case and run. Since there is no code, all the test case will fail. Once it fails, the next step is green. So what is green? You'll start coding step by step so that you will make all the test cases pass. Here you can see red means first you write the test cases and then you'll execute it. All the test cases will become false since there is no code. And then green means you'll write some minimal code to make the test cases pass. Refactor means you ensure all the test cases pass. Here you can see in the diagram. So this is called as a test-driven development. Okay, first the test cases are written, then later on you'll try to resolve those and then satisfy all those test cases by writing the code. So what are the challenges in this? This takes too much longer. Okay, you can imagine if there is a software, there is a module, the developer has to wait until the test cases are written. Okay, that is one of the most disadvantages of this. This requires a strong understanding of testing principles. Yeah, right, because testers are written before the development. Okay, why do we use this TDD? The reason why we use this TDD is because it ensures a better code quality. Yeah, right. If you know, say for example, before coding itself, you'll know that this input field should contain only strings or only numbers. That means you can write a better code, right? Instead of coding and then writing test cases for that. Before itself, if you get to know like what are the requirements and what are the test cases, it will be easier for the developer to code. And then it promotes modular and maintainable code. And then it provides a built-in test for continuous verification. Yeah, right here you can see, first you run all the test cases, it gets failed, and then you write the code, and then all the test cases will get passed, and then you start refactoring, and then it's kind of like a loop. Okay, here you can see test driven means your test will drive the development. Here you have something similar to that, which is called as a behavior driven development. So what is behavior driven development? So in the name itself, say for example, whenever you're working on a project, right, there won't be only the technical team guys. So there will be technical, non-technical team like your managers or some clients or business people, right? So those guys, they don't know to code and all, and those all the technical terms. So how do you fix this problem? So what happens is there is an approach for this, which is called as a behavior-driven development. Here, what happens is this methodology encourages collaboration between developers, testers, and business and stakeholders. Okay, these are your technical guys. These are your non-technical guys. Okay, this defines the software behavior in plain human readable language before the development begins. You got to know that this is the key term here, human readable language. That means you don't write a complex test cases in the form of code. What you basically do is you just write in the human readable language format so that both technical and non-technical guys can understand. So why do we need to use this BDD? So it ensures the software meets business expectations. Yeah, right. Say for example, if you have a company, so usually all the business aspects are handled by the business executives, right? Those are non-technical guys. So for them, if they want to come across this, for example, like particular software, you can't show them actual test cases because it'll be in the form of a code, right? So for that, how do you do that? You use this approach. Okay, it improves the communication between, here you can see, it improves the communication between technical and non-technical because you write the test cases in human readable language. Okay. Then What is the workflow? Here you can see first you define the behavior, right? For example, say the similar example, you are developing a login component. For that, here you can see here you use a like one of the most common languages called as a Gherkin. So this automate test completes the scenarios and execute test scripts. So this comes under your automation also. I'll go through this what and all steps here. You just need to know some key points here. So write code. So develop the application to pass the test cases. This also follows the same approach like TTD. Okay. And then refactor. It improves the implementation while ensuring all the test cases pass. Repeat for each feature. What are the benefits? It ensures the software aligns with the business goals. Yeah, right. So that means both technical and non-technical guys can understand your test cases. It also improves clarity and then maintains some in requirements. It encourages collaborations across various different teams and also provides documentation. So what do you mean by this Gherkin? I told right. You write the test cases in the form of human readable language. Here you can see in the diagram here. This is, for example, you're using some automation tools, right? For example, like Cucumber or something like Playwright and Cypress. So what happens is, so some of them, they use a language called as a Gherkin. So here the test cases will be written like this, like feature login. As a user, I want to be able to log into an application so that I can access my account information. So what is the scenario? Given one, I'm a login page. So when I enter my username and password and I click the login button, then I should. So this is something which is called as a Gherkin language. So whatever you write, so here you can see this is a human readable format, right? This is not like your actual code. So what happens? The automation tools will take care of it. So here both technical as well as non-technical guys can understand the test cases. Okay, here you can see the diagram. First, you define the requirements, describe the behavior, run and fail the test, apply the code to update, run and pass. This is a similar approach to this TDD also. The only difference is here you write in the form of human readable language. Okay. Then what is unit testing? We went through what is unit testing, right? Unit testing means where you test the individual components, units. That means your smallest part of application. Okay. What are the key points here? Here you can see in a definition of unit testing, focus on testing small independent pieces of code. Yeah, right. Like your function, classes. So usually these are done by the developers itself. Okay, yeah, here you can see a unit can be a function, method, or a class. So it ensures that each part of the code works correctly and independently. Yeah, right. As a developer, for example, you're writing a function, only you know what's the logic of that function. So as once you finish writing the code, it's your duty to test whether this functionality which have been written is working perfectly or not. Okay. Benefits of unit testing: it catches bugs early, reducing the debugging time. Yeah, right. And then it improves code quality and maintainability. It makes refactoring easy without breaking the functionality. Yeah, right. That means before the testers start writing test cases, the developer itself will take some time and then he'll start doing unit testing. Okay. And then what is performance testing and end-to-end testing? In the name itself, you'll get to know. So what is performance? Performance means how much time your application takes to run, or else how fast is your application, how slow is your application. All this comes under your performance testing. So in performance testing is a type of software testing that evaluates how a system performs under different conditions. Yeah, right. Say for example, you are testing an application, everything works fine. But you also need to think in mind, say for example, if some guy who is in the village is trying to access your website, what happens at the time? Due to internet slow, for example, say the internet in his village is very slow. That means what happens? That is also your test case scenario. So you should think of all these terms and then how it affects your performance of the application. It checks the speed, scalability, and stability of your application. Okay. What is the purpose of this? So usually most of the test cases try to achieve the same thing. What? They try to reduce the bugs. They try to make your application more speed, more faster, and more secure. You can see it ensures the systems run fast and efficiently under normal and peak conditions. And then it also identifies the performance bottlenecks. That means what, which function is taking much time to execute, which function is taking less time to execute. So you have to handle this during performance testing. And you can see the benefits of it. It ensures a smooth experience, prevents downtime. It also has a capacity to So it's a different benefits. You can go through this, all the points inside the PPT. I'll be sharing the PPT with the map. And then what is end-to-end testing? In the name itself, we'll get to know. So end-to-end testing means, so here you can see the entire application, the front end, your back end, as well as the database is tested at one go. Okay. You can see this validates the entire application workflow from start to finish. Okay. And how all the components work together as expected. What is the purpose of this? This ensures that the entire system, which is front end, back end, database, API works correctly. Okay. Due to this, you'll get an entire test case scenario of how this application works in the real world. Okay. It also detects issues if there is some different components, if there is some network issues or some different package dependencies. So all this you can come across this end-to-end testing. Okay, what are the benefits? So since you are testing the whole application, it is much more easier, and it also increases the customer satisfaction by preventing real-world failures. It also reduces manual testing because you're testing the entire application, right? The full stack. That's the reason. One of the most common things software is something called as a Cypress and Playwright. So this I'll just go through how the Playwright will look like. This is an end-to-end tool to test your application. Here you can see end-to-end testing. So here you can see, so with this tool, you can install this, and then you can go through the documentation of how you can use this to test your applications. Okay. This is one of the most common tool which comes under your automation for your end-to-end testing. Whereas your performance, there is something called as a Lighthouse and web page test. Okay, these are all different tools. So don't just stick to one tool. You just need to know the basic fundamentals of it. Okay. Then before coming through the storybook, I'll just finish these two topics because this requires coding. So coding part I'll do at the last. Theory part I'll finish at the starting itself. Okay, then what is accessibility standards? So in the name itself, it says, right? So what is accessibility standards? You would have come across these terms whenever you type some HTML disk, right? So there is some inbuilt property called as ARIA. Okay. Accessibility standards means accessible rich internet application. So what is accessibility? That means some like users can access your websites or not. Okay. So there is a set of instructions or protocols. So what this says is, this is a set of attributes that improves the accessibility of web application for users with disabilities. Okay, this is very important to understand. Whenever you're developing an application, you need to keep in mind that even people who are blind, for example, people who don't have hands or like fingers or something like that, people who are disabled, we should also make your application available to them. Okay, this comes under your accessibility standards, especially those use something called as screen readers. So we'll come across what is screen readers, keyboard navigation, and accessible technologies. Okay, you understood what is ARIA, right? Accessible rich internet application. That means you need to make your application available to different people with disabilities. Okay, why it is important? This improves the accessibility for users with disabilities. Yeah, right. When you're developing an application, the end term is like almost all the users should be able to use it, or else there's no point in building, right? It enhances screen readers to compatibility for dynamic elements. We'll go through what are screen readers. So it supports keyboard navigation and through the complex UI, it meets the legal compliance. Okay, these are some set of protocols. Okay, what are the key roles? So how do you achieve this? So whenever you go to HTML, right, there is some property called as roles. Okay, inside role, you should mention what does this particular code or element do. And then there is something called as a semantic HTML. I'll go through what it is. Here you can see if I go here, if I say, for example, if I have some button, so where is my JSX? I'll go to my JSX. So there's no JSX here. It's okay. For example, you have some button, right? I'll just write in the comment itself. Button / button. So what happens here? You can add a property called as role. Okay, what happens if you had this role property? What happens in your websites? So usually when some people will access the website, they'll be having something called as screen readers. So what are screen readers? Say for example, a person who is blind. Now say for example, if you come across a guy who is blind, you'll be having a software called as text to speech, right? So whenever he gets a call or something inside a mobile, there will be a text or speech saying that you have received a call from this person. So whatever comments he will do, he'll say in the voice, and then whatever like a reply he gets, it comes across the voice. Okay, text to voice, right? So what happens here? So similar. So this is a part of your screen reader. Here you can see in the diagram here. If you have a website, this website, a normal user can access this. Say, for example, a person with disabilities wants to access this. So how can you make that? So through the help of screen readers. So say, for example, here you can see there is a speech synthesizer. So what does it do? Here you can see screen reader software. Okay, what does this do? First, say, for example, you want the output in the form of audio. Okay, here you can see audio output via synthetic language. Okay, what does the screen reader do? So based on different outputs, so it will try to generate your website. Here you can see it can say it can generate in the form of audio. Here you can see the screen readers can also generate in the form of braille, and then your voice command, and then to like via keyboard or joystick or different things. So understood, right? So the main key thing is whenever you're building a website, you need to keep in mind that even the persons with disabilities should be able to access this. That can be achieved through different process. You have this topic is too vast, but one of the most commonly ones are roles and semantic tags. So what are semantic tags? So semantic tags. So instead of using simple div or plain HTML, say for example, you're developing some website. So click on semantic tags here. You can see instead of simply giving div, so in HTML, there is something called as semantics. So what you have to do is instead of creating div everywhere, you need to specify the semantics. Like for example, you're creating an header, you need to create header HTML tag, nav tag, section tag, aside tag, footer tag. So aside tag is usually whenever you have some ads, right? You use it there. So with this, what happens? The screen readers can easily understand like which part of your website is what. Okay. Then what is internationalization? So what is internationalization? Say for example, you're building a website, right? The end goal is you need to make as much as audience like reachable, or else your main target is the more users you, can access your website, the more traffic you get, the more profits you get. That's the key thing, right? What is internationalization? Say for example, you're from India and then you build an English, say for example in Hindi or Kannada or something. That means only the local audience can use it. Say for example, if some guy who is in Spain or Japan should access your website, but he doesn't know English. So how can you do this? You can do this using internationalization. Okay, there is a package called as an I-18N. Okay, this is a standard package. With this, what happens is you design an application thinking in mind that this application should be internationalized. That means for now, I'll just develop this application in English. Later, I need to make this application internationalized. That means this application can be converted to different languages based on the locality. Okay, that also can be achieved. Say, for example, you're accessing a website from US or somewhere. There, the default language will be English. Say, for example, you're accessing the same website from Spain or France. There, based on the whichever country you are there, the language can be changed. So whenever the language is changed, your website should reflect. Yeah, right. That's the key point, or else there's no point of building an application. That's what's called as internationalization. Okay, this is called as an I-18N. So don't get confused by this. So I is your starting letter, N is your last letter, 18 means there are 18 letters between it. Okay, this is just a short name. It is a process of designing a product so that it can be adapted for different languages, cultures, and regions. You understood? Whenever you're building an application, this is a design system where you should have to think in mind and build it so that it can be translated to different languages and cultures and different things. Okay, I-18 means is a short form for internationalization. So why it is important? Whenever you try to achieve this, so what happens whenever you implement this, it will reach a global audience. That means user, for example, if from Karnataka, right? Whenever you want to access some, for example, read some article or go through some website, you prefer it to be in your native language. If you're from Andhra Pradesh, you prefer it to be in Telugu. If you're from Tamil Nadu, you prefer it to be Tamil. Even though English is fine, but if you give a touch of native language, it will engage the audience more. Yeah, right. And then what is compliance and regulations? So some countries requires localization for legal reasons. Okay, some countries it is must and should. If you want that website to be accessible, it should be in their native language. Okay, and also it betters the user experience. Yeah, right. Whenever you come across some websites in your native language or different things, it will give a friendly touch, and then it will target the diverse users, and then increase revenue. Yeah, right. The more users access your website, the more revenue you get. Okay. So now how do we achieve this? First, we'll see how do we achieve internationalization. Then we'll go through something called as a storybook. Okay, I'll go here, internationalization. So how do we achieve this inside your React application? Okay, now what I'll do, I'll come here, I'll create a React project. Okay, I'll just create something called as a React app one. Okay, then I'll close this all things. Understood what is internationalization, right? So based on different targets or different regions, you translate your web application. So what I'll do, I'll open in terminal. So what is the command to install React application? npm create white at latest. All right. Once you do this, it will ask what is the project name. So I want the same project name. So I'll add a dot. Dot means create the project inside the same repository itself. Then which framework I want? React. Which language? JavaScript. Now I need to type this command npm I or install. I means it is a shortcut for install. Okay. So once this is done, let it run. I'll open this. Here you can see the key concept is in I-18N is localization. So what is this internationalization and localization? So internationalization means you build the product to enable localization. Okay, that means you're building an application thinking in mind that this should be converted out to different languages based on the area or region. So what is localization? This is just a thinking process. That means you're just keeping in mind. So localization means adapting the process. That means you're actually converting it. So this is usually done during the pre-launch. This is the post-launch. Okay. This is usually done by the software or developers. Okay. Usually whatever the developers are there, they try to internationalize. Okay. What does this UI UX designers or translators or copywriters, right? These are different roles in your company. So what they do is their job is to translate your website into different languages. So we'll try building an application in English as well as French. Okay, and then it adds the markers in the code supports bidirectional text. So yeah, these are different topics here. You can go through that in the PPT. So this is still installing. So let it install. So yeah, it's installed. So now you need to install a package called as, you can see included in the PPT, I-18 next space React hyphen I-18 next. Okay, these are two different packages. Using space, you need to install them. Okay, so now how to do that? npm I-18 next space React hyphen I-18 next. Yeah, right. You can see. So now I'll hit enter. So now this packages gets installed. So this is your main package. This is another package through which you can access inside your React application. So now it has been installed. So how do I check whether it has been installed? I need to go to my package.json. Here you can see this has been installed. Okay. Now I'll run my application. So how to run your React application? npm run dev. Okay. Once you do this, I'll copy paste inside my browser. Okay. Here you can see my React application is running. So what I'll do, I'll just remove this JSX inside the boilerplate code. I don't need this. Inside a wrap.jsx, I'll just put h1. Let us see if it is working or not. Yeah, you can see it is working. Okay. So now what I need to do is I need to create inside SRC. I need to create a file called as uh, inside SRC i18n.js. Okay. Then you need to yeah, import these two packages, right? So now I'll go here. First is import i18n from i18 next. Okay. The second one is import from React i18 next. Inside this, you need to import a function called as initial React i18 next. Okay. You need to import this. So you can see there is a difference here. Here I have directly used. Here I have added inside the brackets. So this comes under your JavaScript. So this is your default import. This is your named import. Okay. So now once you import these two packages, you need to start writing the configurations. So how do you do that? i18n dot use. There is a function called as use. Inside this use, you need to pass this function which you have imported. Okay. Once you pass the function which I have imported, you need to call a function called as init. That means you need to initialize, right? Whenever you're building some third-party applications. So some of the applications by default, they'll initialize, they'll set up everything. But some you have to do it manually. Okay. Inside initialize, you need to pass an object. Okay. This part is done. So inside object, there is a property called as resources. Okay. This also takes an object. Okay. Inside resources, if you come to across this Google, right? If I type I18n language codes. So every language will be having some set of language codes. Okay, here you can see, if I want to use English, right, my language code is EN. If I want to use French, the language code is FR. If I want to use Polish, it is PL. If I want to use Russian, it is RU. So it's up to you guys. So for this project, I'll just use EN for English and FR for French. Okay, I'll come here. So one, I'll create an EN language for English. Okay. Inside EN, I need to pass a function called as translation. Okay. Similar way, I need to do the same thing for French also. I'll copy this, put brackets. So instead of EN, I'll put FR. So FR is a language code for French. Here you can see. That is French, FR. Okay. Once this is done, after resources, I need to set a default language. Okay, these are the languages which are converting. Okay, but you need a default language, right? Whenever I open my application, it should be in either English or French, right? For that, I'm setting the default language as EN. Okay. Other than this, there are different properties you can set, but to make it simple, I'm just doing this much. Okay. Once here, what I'll do, I'll just create properties. Okay. What are those? Welcome message. Let's add a comma here. Okay. So now inside this EN, inside the translation object, I created two properties. One is welcome message and then message. Okay. Usually all this will done by you can see in the diagram here, I have mentioned, by your UI UX users or designers or translators or copywriters. Okay. So once you do this, I need to copy and paste this and translate it to French. Okay. What I'll just paste here. I'll copy this. I'll create the same property here. I'll add it in the French one. Similar one, I'll copy this also. Okay. I'll add it inside my code. Okay. So this is my whatever data I have inside my website, right? What am I doing? I'm translating first this. Whenever I use English, this data gets triggered. If I'm using French, this data gets triggered. Okay. Once you do this, you need to export this as a default I18N. Okay. Once you do this, come to your app.jsx. I'll remove the states and all. It's unnecessary. So once you do this, you need to import that I18, right? So import dot slash I18N. Okay. Once this is done, you need to import a function called as use navigation inside your React I18. So how do you do that? Import from React I18 next. What is the function name? Use translation. Sorry, it's use translation. Okay. You can say I mentioned in the PPT, it is use translation. And then you need to call this inside your function. This is similar to your state. Okay. So whenever you call a state, what does it return? It returns two things, right? Initial variable and a set of function, and then you use array destructuring. Here you are using object destructuring. And then here, whenever you destructure, you'll get two properties. So one is a translate function and then an I18N function. Okay. This translate function is used to translate your actual code based on the language. This is used to translate based on your predefined language. Okay. We'll see how it is achievable. So now what I'll do here, usually whenever you develop a website, right, what I'll do, I'll be having a header, hello all, and then I'll be having a t tag saying some message. Okay. So now what happens here is, by default, when I open my website, this is inside this in English itself. Okay, say for example, if I want to change it to French. So what happens in the browser, you'll be having an option, right? Inside settings. Inside settings, if you search language, if you go to languages, right here, you can see by default, my language is in English. Okay. If I click to French, right, I'll go here. How do you change your browser language? Go to settings, language, go to French, display this in language. So what happens? Here you can see it is still in English. That means the guy who is in French, he can't read whatever data is there in my website, right? Okay. Imagine that you are accessing this website from the France. So there it will still be in the English and you don't know English. So there's no point. So I'll reset this to English itself. So now how do we achieve that? Internationalization. So how do you do that? So instead of hard coding the data, what you need to do is, I'll remove this. Inside flower brackets, T, and then which property you need to access. So which is my property here? Welcome message. Okay, inside T function, call the T function and then pass this parameter. So similar way you need to do here also. Okay. Use T function and then pass the second parameter, which is message. Okay. This is a syntax. So what you are not hard coding the data, you're using the data which is there inside your I18 configuration. Okay, once you do this, what happens? You need to use effect. takes a callback function, and then you need to add an empty dependency array because I need to run this only once. And then using I18 dot change language navigator dot language. So using I18, there is an inbuilt function called as a change language. So inside that, you need to pass navigator.language. So navigator means nothing but your browser. So whatever browser language is using will be set to inside your I18. So now let us see whether this will work or not. So here you can see I'm getting this in English. Hello all, welcome to full stack course. We are learning React. So now say for example, if I change this to French, here you can see the website has been changed to French. If you know French, you can read this. Or else the guy who is in France, you can read this. Okay. If I change this default to English, you can see now my website, if I refresh, it gets converted to English. Okay. This is how you achieve internationalization. Okay. I'll just go through the steps. First, you need to install this package. You need to set up this configuration. Here you need to define. So here I'm using only 2 language codes. Here you can set for any language code. It's up to you guys. So what are inside translation? You need to set it as properties. So whenever you're writing your application, you don't directly hard code your data. What you'll do using translate function, you will access this properties. Okay. And then all this translation and all this won't be done by the developers. So usually your UI UX or your content management guys, so they'll try to convert your website into different languages. Okay, once you do that, you need to export this. Once you export, and then you need to import this and use translation. And then you need to call this using object destructuring, translate function and I18. Okay, using this translate function, you need to access the properties. So whatever the properties there here, inside here, it will get triggered. Okay, and then using this use effect, which runs only once, I'm changing this language. So change language, navigator.language means browser language. You saw right? Whenever I change to French, it converted to France. When I change back to English, it was English again. Okay, this is called as internationalization. Okay. So now the last topic is called as a storybook. So what is storybook? So what say for example, you're building a huge React application, right? If it is small, you don't have to worry about this. If it is a very huge applications where there are like from like 1,000, 2,000 components inside, it will be very hard to test the React applications. So at that time, what happens is there is a tool called as Storybook. Okay, this is used for building, testing, and documenting your UI components in isolation. This is very important to remember. In isolation means you don't use this to test your entire React application. Okay. You use this tool only to build, test, and document only the UI components. That means you can test all the UI components separately in isolation. Okay. You are not testing the UI components throughout your React application. You're just testing only your UI components in isolation. That means separately. Using this, you can also build, you can also document, and then it also helps the developers and designers work collaboratively by providing a visual environment to develop components without running the entire application. You understood this, right? The key thing here is, say for example, you're building a button. Okay. Usually what happens, every button, there'll be something called as a primary, means your main button. So usually it will be in the blue. And then say for example, you want to design a success button, which will be in the green, and then a danger button, like error button, which is in the red. So here what happens, as a developer, you'll start coding. So as a designer, or for example, you're working with some designers, right? So those guys, they can't understand the code. So what happens is, if you use this storybook, it will give you an environment where the guys, like non-technical persons as well as the technical persons, they can modify the components to see how does it actually look based on different attributes and properties. So we'll see how we can achieve this. First, this is the command npx sb at latest init. Okay. So now I'll come to my terminal. I'll stop this. npx sb npx array. It's npx array. Just a minute. No, there's no I. npx sb at latest init. There is no I. sb at latest init. Init means initialize. Okay, I'll run this. Sorry, I used npm. It is npx. This will take a lot of time. You need to guys wait for this. What I'm basically doing is, whenever you install this tool, you can play with your components. That means you can generate different variations of your components. Okay, these are the commands. And now you understood, right? What is storybook? So it is usually used, for example, you can use storybook inside your React or your Angular or different applications. It's up to you guys. So as of now, we are just using inside the React. Here you can see the storybook is added to my, still installing. So getting the correct versions, is installing the dependencies. So let's wait. So what happens, as soon as this gets installed, it will automatically launch itself. Okay, you don't have to run it. Okay. It's still installing. By the time you understood, right, why do we need storybook? It is usually used to test your or test, document, or like build your components in isolation. That means not throughout your React application. You do this stuff in isolation. That means apart from the entire application. Okay. So let it run. Installing dependencies. It will take some time because it's a very heavy file. So by this time, I want you guys to build the projects using React and Angular, and then using APIs and Express.js. So we almost covered all the full stack topics. So now the only pending part is advanced. So today with this we'll get finished, and then tomorrow we'll come across microservices and API gateway, and then we'll see how can we integrate another database called as a Firebase. Okay, which is actually a cloud database. Let it install. So by the time you understood, these are all concepts, right? Testing, what is TDD, what is behavior development, what is unit testing, what is performance testing, what is end-to-end testing. So as a developer, say for example, if you're interested in testing, you can go through this. But even though if you want to be a developer, you need to get familiar with these terms, because when you enter into a company, when you work with testers, right, you need to know these terms so that you can have a better communication. Okay, this is taking too much time. Let's wait. Here I can say, I'll just go through the code. So once you install this, right, you need to create a component. Okay. And then in this component, you change the properties of the component through props. Still installing. Yeah, the first step is create a component with props, and then you will be having a folder called as stories. So inside that stories folders, you need to create a folder called as component.stories.js. Okay. Then you need to add this properties inside it. It's very simple. Yeah. Now it's successful. So now it will automatically run this. Let us wait. You see, Storybook was successfully installed in your project. Now here you can see my Storybook is successfully running. Okay. You don't have to manually run this. It will automatically run this. By default, you will be having a small project inside. Here you can see my Storybook is running successfully. Okay. Here you can see this is how your Storybook looks like. Yeah, let it load. Here you can see meet your new front-end workshop. You can develop, test, and document. Okay. All these three things can be done inside the storybook itself. Okay, here you can see whenever you open this, by default, you'll be having a project here. Okay, you don't have to worry about this. So this is how your UI looks like inside the storybook. You'll be having a component here, and then you can change the properties inside here itself. Okay, instead of using the default, we'll create a similar one, but with our own component. Okay, what we'll do? So I'll go to my SRC. I'll create a new folder called as components. Okay, inside this, I'll create a button component. Okay, button.jsx. And here what I'll do, create RAFCE. And inside this button, just create. Yeah, custom button. Yeah. Once you do this, what I need to do, I'll add some properties. So one is label. The second property is background color. By default, I'll set it to red. Okay, other one is size. By default, I'll set it to 10 pixel. 10 is too much, I guess. Make it 5 pixel. So now what I need to do is, I need to, whatever CSS or custom things I want to add it as a props. And then through the props, I need to access it. This is important whenever you're using the component inside a story book. Okay. So now here I'll create a variable called as styles. Sorry, it is styles is equals to. So one is background color, comma, padding, keep it as size. Okay. Background color is background color, or else you can just add it one itself. This is up to you guys. So now inside here, what I'll do, styles is equals to styles. Okay. I'm just creating a styles object. I'm taking this parameters as a props, and then I'm attaching inside the styles. And then I'm exporting this. So now one step is done, that is creating the component with props. The second step is inside stories folder, you need to create a component.stories.js. So now let's do that. Here you can see whenever you install stories, by default, you'll be having this folder, stories. You need to click on this. So these are something which are given by the browser itself. So what I'll do by your stories packages. So I'll just remove everything. I don't want this. So yeah, I guess I'll just keep it. Instead of button, I'll just rename it to custom button. It's better because there is already a folder called as button. Sorry, it should be custom button. Okay. Then I need to change here also, right? Custom button, custom button. Okay. I created a component called as custom button. Now I have exported. So inside stories folder, I need to create this components stories. So how do I do that? Go to stories, new file, custom button dot story dot js. Okay. If you get this icon, that means you have successfully created a story file for your component. Okay. Now the step 2 is done. What is the step 2? Component dot stories dot js. Okay. Sorry, it should be stories. Doing this. Yes. Okay. STORIES, not story. Okay. Once this is done, the third step is you need to export default and object. Okay. You can see export default and object. Export default and object. Okay. After this step, here you need to specify the properties. So what are the properties? I'll go through here. First is title. Okay. Second is component. Third is tags. So this you ignore this. We'll go through this later. So as of now, you just need to remember this. These are the three most common tags which are used inside your stories. One is title, which says the title of your story component. Second is which component. Third is tags, and then auto docs. Okay. Title, custom, button. Okay. Which component? My custom button component, right? So how do I attach that? I need to import it. Import custom button. Okay. Then inside component, I need to add this custom button. Okay. This is just my name. This is just the title. This is my component. So after this, inside tags, you need to add auto docs. The reason why this is, I'll say once we generate this, tags, auto docs. Okay. Once this is done, the fourth step is, say for example, this is my button. Okay. What is my button? Say for example, my button, I'll remove the background color. Sorry, it should be red, not red. So for example, I'll remove this. By default, it will just be plain. Okay. With 5 pixels. I'll remove this also. Okay. I'll just keep it as empty so that you guys get to know what am I trying to achieve here. Okay. I'm just using these props. Through these props, I'm changing the style of this button. Okay. So inside stories, I created my custom button, and then I imported this button, and then inside the title, I've added the custom button. So this is my title. So and then inside component, I've imported this component, and tags means auto docs. That means it will create a documentation automatically. Okay. You don't have to worry about documentation whenever you use storybooks. Okay. Then here, I'll create something called as a variance. All right. Okay. Say for example, how should my button component look when it is red? That means primary. Okay. For that is export const and then your variant name. Okay. Export. These are means, say for example, if I have one button, I'm creating variations for that button. Okay. Export const primary. Okay. Then I'll export another one. Export const success button. Okay. Disabled button. Okay, I'm just creating different variations for the single component itself. I'm not actually writing the code. Okay. Without storybook, you need to write this component again and again. Okay. Say for example, you don't want to code it. You just want it to look, how does it look in different case scenarios. So for that, what I just created 3 variations of my button. So inside this object, you need to pass a property called as args. Okay. You can see I've mentioned here args. This takes the object. Here you need to pass your style properties. Okay. Inside args, what I'll do for primary. So which and all I'm passing here. So here you can see instead of this hard coded, right? So I'll remove this and I'll add label here. Okay. All this data I'll be passing inside my where? All this data I'll be passing inside my stories. Okay. By default, there is nothing. I'll come here. I'll create a component variant using args. First is label. Inside label, I'll pass primary. Okay. The second arg is background color, right? For primary, I'll keep it blue. And then size. Size, I'll make it primary, I'll create very big. For example, like 20 pixel. Okay. Second arg is success. Args takes an object. Here, label is success. Background color is green. And then size, I'll make it a bit lesser than the primary, which is 15 pixel. Okay. The third one is disabled. Okay. Inside here, input label. disabled. Background color, I'll make it gray. Sorry. Gray. And then what is the size? I'll keep it 10 pixels. Okay. Now successfully created different variations for my custom button. So now let us check how this will look inside my stories. Okay. So come to stories, here you can see above this example, there is something called as custom button. You can see whatever I add inside my title. If I add double underscore, double hyphens, I'll get double hyphens here. Okay. Whatever title you add here, it will get displayed inside this left section. So if you click on this arrow here you can see there is something called as a configure project. So how did this come? Here you can see this is all pre-generated. Okay. Once I click on this object, this custom button object, here you can see there is something called as docs. So how did I get this? If you add this tags, right? Auto docs. If I remove this, say for example, I'll just comment it. You can see here documentation has been removed. Okay. If I add this tag, your documentation will be added automatically. Here you can see now my documentation is done here. Okay. Here you can change the documentation. And then the third step was we created variations. So what was first one was primary button, success button, and then disabled button. Here you can see I got 3 variations for my component. Now I'll just click on this. Okay. Let me just check. Here. Here you can see I can access the properties here. Here you can see if I click on primary, right? There is a label called as primary. There is a background color and then there is a size. Okay, here you can see objects are not valid as a React side. Range type. Okay. Yeah, sorry, there is a here you can see this is a function, right? Component. So how do you actually pass the props? You don't directly pass the props. How do you do that? What is the syntax? Flower brackets, right? This is how you pass the props. Okay. This was the error which I was getting there. So now here you can see, yeah, now it is successful. Okay. If I click on primary, I'm getting a primary button. If I click on success, you can see I'm getting the success button. Yeah, right. If I click on disabled, I'm getting the disabled button. Okay. So now what I'll do, I'll set another property also. Here you can see if this is primary, right? Say for example, if you're a developer, you will go to the code and you'll change this colors here. Say for example, if you're collaborating with some UI UX designers or some different non-technical persons, so how can they modify these components? So they can't modify in the code, right? So through this storybook, you can see here, you can change this properties here. So whatever you add inside this. So what does the storybook do? It will actually generate inside the component itself. So here I can change this to light blue. Here you can see, and then I can also change the settings here, 80 pixels. So it's up to me. Okay. Here I'll add another property called as a width. I'll come here, width. Comma. Okay. So now I'll come to my stories. Here I'll pass in another attribute called as width. inside string. Yeah. So now let us see what will happen. You can see a success button is only this much of width. Okay. Now if I want this to be changed, I'll make it as 30. I'll copy paste the same thing for all the properties. Okay. This is how you can design your components. You can document your components. You can test your components inside the storybook. Okay. So now here you can see this is primary. This is disabled. This is your success. Just make it 100. It looks better. I'll make this 100. I'll make this 200. I'll make this 300. Okay, this is how you can test inside your storybooks. If I want to do the same thing, right? I need to create a component. I need to write the code, copy paste the code. I need to repeat the process again and again. So to avoid this, you can use the storybooks. Here you can see primary. I'll remove this. Just refresh this. What is my default? You can see, yeah. So what is the default width? It's 15, right? I'll set it to 15. Okay, and now you can see this is my component. So now if I want to change this, right? So instead of going to the code and change, I can test it here itself. What I'll do, I'll set the width. So for example, I'm not satisfied with 100. I'll make this 200. Not satisfied, 80, 800. I'll make it 0. Okay. This is how you can play with your different components inside the storybook. I'll go to my success component. So here what I'll do, I didn't like this color. Let me check how does this color look. Okay. And then I don't like this. I'll make all this as caps. Okay. You can see here. Then I'll make this little bit smaller so that it will fit with the text. 90. This also 70. Okay. Here you can see this is how you can play with your components. Okay. And then disabled is too big. This also I'll make it 60. Looks good. Now this is too, for example, it is too bright, right? Light. Okay. This is how a non-technical person can also test your React components based on your UI requirements using a tool called a storybook. Okay. I'll just repeat the process. First, you create a component. What are all variations you want? You need to add it inside the props. Okay. Using this props, I'm creating a style object. I'm setting it to my styles. So once I do this, you need to export this. Then inside your stories folder, right? You need to create a component.stories.js with IES, not story. Once that is done, you need to import your component and then we need to export a default. So this default contains your, here you can see your title and then docs. Okay, and then your variants. Here you can see this contains title, what is my component, and then the tags. So this is used for documentation. So if I go to my docs here you can see the documentation is already done. So here you can see this is my component and then what is the label, what is the default value, what are the control values. So since there is no default value here, I'm not getting here. If I add some default value for this primary, right? So if this for this component, I'll come here, I'll keep default as blue, not blue. Blue. Okay. Now if I rerun the story component, you can see here, my default is set to blue. Default background color is blue. Similar way, you can see how does my component look? What are the values? What are descriptions? Here you can see. You can also see the code also. Okay, show code. So this is how the documentations are automatically done inside your storybook. Then the second are your variants. So how do you create variants? So first you just create your variable, which is an object. This contains another property called as args. So inside args, whatever props you'll pass here, right? This should be defined inside your arcs. Okay, based on this, you can generate different varieties of your single component. Okay, this is a single component, but I'm defining different varieties of it. Okay, through the storybook. Okay. Once this is done, inside the PPT I have mentioned, if you want to use some functions, right? Say for example, if I pass some functions here inside the props, if you want to check some functionality, you can use another tag called as arc types, function name, action, and then you have to give a function name to this. So this is if you are using some functions inside your props. So since we are not using functions, if you're using functions, you need to define this property arc types, which function event like on click or on change, and then you need to define it as an action and then give a name for it. Okay, this is used whenever you're using any functions. So since our function like our component doesn't contain any functions, we are not using this. Okay, this is how you can achieve your storybook. Okay, this is very important for smaller applications. This is unnecessary. If you're building very huge applications, right, like which has some 10,000 or some 1,500 components. So there for individual components, if you can't write code for different varieties. So without storybook, if I want to achieve this, what should I do? I need to create 3 components and then write the code again. So to avoid that, if you use storybook, you can generate different varieties. You can check your actions. So if you have any inbuilt functions, right, it comes here. And then also you can write some visual test interactions. There are different things which are available to you easily whenever you use storybook. Okay. So other than this, let us see, is there any topics on the testing? Internationalization. Sorry, okay. All the topics are done. So if you have any doubts, you guys can ask in the comment section. So I want you guys to practice the storybook and then internationalization, which is very important and crucial whenever you're building a website or applications. Other than that, if you have any doubts, you can ask. So we'll meet tomorrow. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So yeah, students, like tomorrow is the last day for this session. So tomorrow we will be having an assessment. I will let you know the timings by tomorrow in the evening, like when you will join the session at 7:30. Okay. Yeah. So thank you all. Thank you for joining. We are winding up for the day. Thank you. Good night.